Chris Eubank Jr, a professional boxer active over the past 15 years. Son of the legendary Chris Eubank Sr, often criticised as being trapped in his father's shadow and falling short every time he steps up to the big plate. With a long, eventful, prosperous career and with his biggest fight yet just around the corner, and not to mention him being one of my personal favourite modern day boxers, here is the story of Chris Eubank Jr so far, leading up to his upcoming fight against Connor Benn. Christopher Livingston Eubank Jr was born on September 18th, 1989 in East Sussex, England as the second-born son to Chris Eubank, who would go on to hold the WBO middleweight and super middleweight titles. He holds wins over Michael Watson, Dan Sherry, Gary Stretch, and of course a win and a draw against Nigel Benn, and is widely regarded as one of the best and most eccentric fighters in British boxing history. Growing up as Chris Eubank's son, of course he got into boxing at a very early age. Eubank had a 4-year-long amateur career from ages 18 to 22, and amassed an amateur record of 24 wins and 2 losses, until he made his professional debut on November 12, 2011, in which he won by TKO in the 4th round. Over the next 3 years, he amassed a professional record of 18 wins with 13 by knockout. And with that, he earned his first big test, a title fight against British middleweight champion Billy Joe Saunders, who had an undefeated record of 20 wins, 11 of which coming by way of knockout. The winner of this fight was expected to go on to fight WBO middleweight world champion Andy Lee. Eubank and Saunders met in the ring on November 29, 2014 in London on the undercard to Tyson Fury vs Derek Chisora 2. After an electrifying fight that was close at times, it went the full 12 rounds and Billy Joe Saunders took the win by split decision. After his first career loss, Eubank had his comeback fight against undefeated WBA interim middleweight champion Dmitry Chodunov on February 28th the following year. Eubank won by a 12th round stoppage, winning him his first ever title. After the fight, he proceeded to call out Billy Joe to a rematch, however that fight never came to fruition. For the remainder of 2015, Eubank signed to Matchroom Boxing under promoter Eddie Hearn. His first fight under this new banner was against Tony Jeter in October, where he won via 2nd round TKO.
I'm coming for Spike O'Sullivan now. It's going to be one hell of a fight. He's been talking a lot of mess, and so it's time for some punishment.
And then was scheduled to fight on the undercard to Anthony Joshua versus Dillian Whyte at the O2 Arena in December against Gary O'Sullivan, who held a record of 22 wins and 1 loss, and just like Eubank, his only defeat was at the hands of Billy Joe Saunders. Things got heated at the weigh-in when Sullivan kissed Eubank on the mouth while facing off. Eubank got his get back and put a beating on Sullivan until the fight was stopped when Sullivan's corner retired him in his corner after sustaining a fractured eardrum. And for his next fight, Chris got his second chance at the British middleweight title against current holder Nick Blackwell on March 26, 2016 at Wembley Arena. Eubank put on a dominant display for the entire fight over Blackwell. So much so that after the 8th round, Chris Eubank Sr instructed his son to stop hitting Blackwell in the head and instead on the body.
You keep on beating him like this. 1, he's getting hurt. 2, if it goes to a decision, why hasn't the referee stopped the fight? I don't get why. So maybe you shouldn't leave it to the referee. But you're not going to take him out to the face, you're going to take him out to the body.
The fight was eventually stopped in the 10th round after a large swelling over Blackwell's left eye. However, after that fight, Blackwell was rushed to hospital due to bleeding to the brain and was in a coma for a whole week. Team Eubank faced major criticism from Blackwell due to holding a press conference after the fight and going partying instead of checking up on his condition. To show their sorrow, months later the Eubanks went on Good Morning Britain to offer Blackwell his British middleweight title back. However, he declined as Blackwell announced his retirement from the sport. However, exactly 2 weeks after that fight, a young Connor Benn made his professional debut at the O2 in London at 19 years of age, where he won by TKO victory in the 1st round on the Anthony Joshua Charles Martin undercard, starting the path he would go on to eventually meet Chris Eubank Jr 10 years down the line. Eubank had one more fight in 2016 before announcing in December that he would be moving up weight classes to super middleweight to fight IBO super middleweight champion Reynold Quinlan on February 4th, 2017. Eubank put up another dominant display against Quinlan and won the super middleweight title after the fight was stopped in the 10th round. Eubank would then go on to retain his super middleweight title on July 15th against Arthur Abraham Abraham, where he won a unanimous decisions points victory. After his win against Abraham, Eubank was selected to take part in the World Boxing Super Series, to be one of 8 super middleweights taking part in a boxing elimination tournament. Avni Yildirim was selected as Eubank's opponent in the quarterfinals, an undefeated fighter with 16 victories. The fight took place in Germany on October 7th, 2017, with Eubank coming through and winning by KO in the 3rd round. A week later, it was confirmed that Eubank would take on George Groves in the semi-finals of the tournament, after defeating Jamie Cox in the quarterfinals. This would be Eubank's biggest test since the Saunders fight. The fight took place on February 17th, 2018 at Manchester Arena, and unfortunately Eubank suffered the 2nd loss of his career via unanimous decision, eliminating him from the tournament. He put up a good fight against Groves, but was clearly outlanded and outpointed for the majority of the fight. Although he went on to win his next fight in September on the undercard to the tournament finale, when his opponent retired in the corner after the 3rd round due to a shoulder injury. Eubank shared after the fight that he felt the injury wasn't legit and a fight between the two almost broke out after, which was very odd.
I hurt my shoulder through the 2nd round, I couldn't use it anymore. Why wait for a beating and a half then off him? This is my good arm to fight with, your job to keep him off. From there on he was going to destroy me then, wasn't he? No point holding up for a beating, is there?
Thank you for clearing that up, Chris.
With fighters, you know, your shoulder's bad, I understand, but you got to pull through these things. That's the only way you're going to make it in the game.
Not if there's another 7 rounds left. I'd like to see you, if you had a sore shoulder, in the 1st round as bad as mine, would you finish off in 7 rounds with me? Maybe I look
in my
very good
2nd professional fight, I fought with one arm for the entire fight. That's how much I wanted to.
Yeah, that's why. Do you know who he fought? A journeyman that he could beat with no hands. So it's a difference in this level of boxing, fighting with a bad shoulder. Listen, I don't get arrogant, right?
We're not here
because I know one bit afraid of you. Anytime.
Guys, let's not have the fight again a second time.
One hand.
Let's not have the fight a second time, guys, please.
Going into 2019, Eubank was set to face former middleweight champion James DeGale on February 23rd at the O2 Arena with the IBO super middleweight title on the line. Eubank spent time training at the Mayweather boxing gym in Las Vegas for the first time since his amateur days in preparation for the fight. The bout went the full distance, with Chris Eubank knocking down DeGale twice in the 2nd and 10th round and taking a unanimous decision victory. After the DeGale fight, Eubank went back down to his original weight class at middleweight. He won his first fight back at that weight in December 2019, which would end up being Chris's last fight for another 17 months due to the COVID-19 outbreak. At some point during this layoff, Eubank started training under the tutelage of Roy Jones Jr, a former 4-division world champion who was his head coach for his return fight on May 1st, 2021 against Marcus Morrison. The fight was clearly a tune-up to support his 17-month break, but regardless, it was a clear victory for Eubank and went on to win a 10-round unanimous decision. But sadly, just 2 months after this fight, Chris Eubank's younger brother Sebastian passed away from a heart attack on July 9th, which affected both Chris and his father immensely, which created a serious rip in their relationship that is still present to this day. It was also thought to be around this time when Chris removed his father from his team moving forward in his career. There's been very little that's been confirmed about this ordeal, but Eubank Jr has said that he wanted to step away from his father's shadow and walk his own path to create his own legacy, to step away from the reputation of just being known as Chris Eubank's son.
It got to a stage where I needed to step out of the shadow completely. It's a big shadow. But it got to a stage where I realized I have to separate myself from this huge character that's always next to me. And it got to a stage where I decided that I needed to walk my own path. He was not happy with that decision. That's the start of it. Then you have the situation with my brother passing away. That affected him in a deep way, affected all of us. That incident, coupled with the fact that we were already not seeing eye to eye, destroyed a large part of the relationship. And it still hasn't seemed to have recovered, unfortunately.
Have you made
To pay tribute to his brother, Chris wore the word Sebastian on his trunks in his next fight in October. On February 5th, 2022, Eubank faced Liam Williams at Cardiff International Arena. Eubank sent Williams to the canvas a total of 4 times in the fight in what was a dominant performance. He won on all judges' scorecards and was awarded a unanimous decision win. In the summer that year, rumours of a Eubank vs Benn fight started circulating and was officially announced on August 10th to take place at the O2 Arena in London on October 8th. With a catch weight of 157 pounds. Chris Eubank, who had the longer and more experienced career behind him, but Connor Benn being the younger and up-and-coming fighter, had amassed an undefeated record of 21 wins and 14 of those coming by way of knockout, and had just made his 8th defence of his WBA welterweight title. Hype and excitement for this fight immediately skyrocketed, being billed as born rivals due to both their fathers' history back in the 90s. This matchup was destined to happen, considering their seniors having arguably the greatest rivalry in British boxing history.
You are? What, you think I'm gonna be a walk in the park?
I mean, yeah, on a nice summer's day.
Unfortunately, disaster struck 3 days before the scheduled date when Benn tested positive for PEDs and the fight was immediately cancelled. Benn faced a strict ban from the sport, which was massively disappointing for boxing fans considering this would have been a huge fight with a rivalry that had been continued on for 30 years. After the cancellation of his fight with Connor Benn, his next fight was scheduled to be against Liam Smith. He had shared the ring in the past with big names like Canelo Alvarez and Jaime Munguia. The fight was held at Manchester Arena on January 21st, 2023, with Eubank coming in as a heavy favourite. But to the shock of many, in the 4th round, Smith sent Eubank to the canvas for the first time in his career. He made it back to his feet but almost instantly was knocked down again and the fight was stopped. Liam Smith pulling off the upset in the 4th round, the 3rd defeat of Eubank's career and the first time he was stopped in a fight. After the loss, Eubank immediately activated the rematch clause and switched trainers from Roy Jones to Bomac, who is known for training the likes of Terence Crawford. And after 2 delays, the fight was on for September 2nd again in Manchester Arena. Eubank came through with a career best performance, winning every round, knocking Smith down in the 4th and the 10th when the fight was called off, and Eubank got his revenge. As we went into 2024, Chris Eubank joined Riyadh's season. Eubank was scheduled to square off against former European middleweight champion Camille, whatever that says. Eubank put on another masterclass performance and won the fight after 4 knockdowns and was given the vacant IBO middleweight title. And after the fight, no other than Connor Benn entered the ring and faced off with Eubank, which was the fight expected to happen next at Riyadh's season. And on January 24th, 2025, Turki Al-Sheikh announced that Eubank Jr vs Benn, billed as Fatal Fury, would take place at Tottenham Hotspur on April 26th. Since the cancellation of the last fight, Connor Benn had recovered from his ban and went on to win his next 2 fights on points. And that leads us to today, where we are only weeks away from seeing this massive fight between Eubank and Benn. So there we have it. That is the story of Chris Eubank Jr. so far. You know, just from working on and putting together this video, it's given me a newfound love and appreciation for Chris Eubank Jr. Not just as a fighter, but as a person. I've always been a big fan of him and his career before, but researching everything that has gone on in his life lately, from the passing of his brother to his complications with his father, I really hope he wins, man. I'm really rooting for him for this fight, and I do hope his dad is there by his side for it. Now we have Eubank versus Benn to look forward to on April 26th. I can't wait.